Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, if you've seen Charlie Kaufman's absolutely beautiful, baffling, and honestly deeply melancholic masterpiece, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, you're probably walked away with a head full of questions. I mean, the narrative just seems to constantly slip and slide, right? It changes rules and reality from scene to scene, which can feel totally disorienting on a first watch. But today, we're going to completely flip the script. We're going to decode this entire surreal mystery by looking at it through a single, heartbreaking lens, and that is the reflections of an elderly high school janitor at the very end of his life.
So let's just dive right into it by asking the absolute biggest question viewers have right from the opening scene. We start off on this snowy road trip, right? And we're hearing the continuous internal monologue of a young woman who we basically know as Lucy. She just keeps thinking to herself over and over, I'm thinking of ending things. And she really appears to be contemplating breaking up with her boyfriend Jake, who she's only been seeing for 6 weeks. We're following her every single thought. But, well, there's a massive problem here. She doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, you heard that right. This is not a snowy road trip at all. What we're actually watching unfold is a final, really desperate fantasy playing out inside the mind of a dying man named Jake. Because in the real world, Jake is actually that elderly high school janitor we keep seeing intercut throughout the film. He's just sitting alone in his truck during this brutal blizzard, literally letting the freezing cold slowly overtake him. So this entire narrative about a young couple journeying out to meet the parents, that is just his consciousness flashing before his eyes. He is desperately sorting through a lifetime of memories, deep regrets, and these agonizing what-ifs in the quiet moments right before he freezes to death.
Section 1. The Janitor's Final Fantasy.
You know, the film actually telegraphs this whole tragic twist through these really jarring glitches in Jake's fantasy way before we ever even reach the high school parking lot. Just think about the trip. The young woman's name is constantly changing. First she's Lucy, then she's Louisa, then Lucia, and suddenly she's Ames. One minute she's studying quantum physics, the next she's a painter, and then, wait, she's a waitress? And remember when she recites that incredibly morbid poem called Bone Dog like she wrote it? Well, it's actually from a book sitting right there in Jake's childhood bedroom. She even looks at a photo of a young Jake and somehow genuinely thinks it's a picture of herself. And then she goes down to the basement and finds a washing machine totally full of identical high school janitor uniforms. Listen, these are not sloppy continuity errors from the director. They are literal fragmented glitches of a deteriorating human brain.
You can't fake a thought. That quote brilliantly captures the core theme of both the original book and Kaufman's film. Our brains just fire off continuously, drifting from one memory to the next in this stream of totally unvarnished, unavoidable truth. You really can't fake a thought. So as Jake's mind starts chilling down in the freezing cold, he simply cannot keep the fiction going anymore. His meticulously built fantasy is struggling to maintain its own logic, and the real world, his actual, lonely, isolated existence, just starts bleeding right through the cracks.
Section 2. The Girl Who Never Was.
And here is the truly heartbreaking truth of it all. Jake never dated her. We actually find out really late in the story that Jake simply watched this woman at a bar one night. He was way too paralyzed by his own anxiety and self-doubt to ever actually walk over and say hello to her. So years later, inside his dying mind, she transforms into this ultimate idealized avatar. He names her Lucy, pulling that straight from the beautiful, idealized woman who dies young in William Wordsworth's poetry. Inside his fantasy, she is everything he isn't. She's a brilliant physicist, a published poet, an amazing painter. She exists in his mind for one reason: to prop up his own unfulfilled ego and give him the companionship he was just too terrified to go after in reality.
It's wild because when you map Jake's real-world traumas directly onto his fantasy, all the film's surreal nightmares suddenly make total perfect sense. Take that horrific story about the farm pigs being eaten alive by maggots because his father neglected them. That is straight up Jake's manifestation of feeling completely ignored and forgotten by his own dad. And the sneering girls at the Tulsytown ice cream stand, they perfectly represent the intense social rejection and mockery he lived through back in high school. Even those beautiful landscape paintings Lucy claims are hers, those are actually by a real artist named Ralph Albert Blakelock, which reflects Jake's own abandoned artistic ambitions that he literally locked away in his terrifying, creepy basement. His real life is heavily informing this fake dream.
Section 3. A Lifetime of Regrets.
Now, during that incredibly tense dinner scene at the farmhouse, time completely loses all meaning. We literally sit there and watch an entire lifetime of parental decline happen in a single chaotic evening. I mean, one moment his mother is this vibrant younger woman, then suddenly his dad is suffering from severe dementia, wandering around the house just putting labels on absolutely everything, and then moments later his mother is suddenly on her deathbed, gasping for air. This crazy, fluid timeline speeds up and slows down because it symbolizes Jake's deep, lifelong anxieties. He's terrified of the grueling thanklessness of caretaking, the total tragedy of aging, and ultimately, he has a paralyzing fear of death itself.
Section 4. Warped by pop culture.
So how did Jake cope with all that agonizing loneliness? He consumed media. So much media, in fact, that his own desires have been completely hijacked by Hollywood. The guy doesn't even have his own original thoughts anymore. When Lucy delivers that super passionate 2-minute critique of the film A Woman Under the Influence, she's literally quoting the legendary film critic Pauline Kael word for word from a book we saw earlier. When Jake imagines how he first met Lucy, he completely steals the entire plot from some cheesy Robert Zemeckis romantic comedy he watched on his break. His whole identity has just become this patchwork quilt of other people's art.
And honestly, this is a brilliant meta-commentary on how pop culture kind of brainwashes us into expecting these perfect, happy endings that real life just rarely delivers. Jake completely bought into the ultimate rom-com lie. He thought that if he just waited around long enough, some grand romantic gesture would magically save him. But the tragic truth of his actual reality is that his paralyzing fear of just walking up and talking to people led to a lifetime of profound isolation. He basically waited his entire life for a movie script to happen to him, and well, it never did.
Section 5. The fear of aging.
Other animals live in the present, humans cannot, so they invented hope. That line takes us right back to those trapped farm animals we hear so much about. Jake realizes that working as a janitor, sweeping the exact same high school hallways year after year, he's really no different than a sheep stuck in a pen, just existing in this endless repetitive cycle. But humans carry a much heavier burden, right? Unlike animals, we actually know we are going to die. And to cope with that absolute feeling of dread, we invent hope. We hope tomorrow's going to be better. We hope we'll finally meet someone special.
But as Jake grows old, that hope violently curdles into despair. Society totally discards the elderly. People like Jake are just left feeling completely invisible, wandering the halls like a ghost while all the young students just ignore him. Once Jake finally lets go of that invented hope, once he fully realizes the movie ending isn't coming for him, he accepts his grim reality. And that's when he begins the physical process of actually ending things in his snowed-in truck.
Section 6. The tragic final bow. Then we get to the high school hallway, and this stunning, totally theatrical dream ballet erupts out of nowhere. We see a younger, handsome Jake dancing so joyfully with his idealized girlfriend. It's this beautiful representation of the life and the marriage he always wanted. But then, the older, real-life janitor steps right in and interrupts them. In this incredibly violent clash, the janitor literally stabs the younger Jake, completely ending the beautiful dance. It's such a profound visual. It's literally his own self-doubt murdering his dreams, leaving nobody but the sad janitor to mop up the bloody mess. In his final moments, the hallucination shifts over to the school auditorium. Jake steps out on stage and he's wearing old-age makeup. He accepts this fake Nobel Prize and gives an acceptance speech that is lifted directly from the movie A Beautiful Mind. Then he starts singing Lonely Room from the musical Oklahoma. It's a song all about a lonely farmhand who can only ever find happiness inside his dreams. Singing this to an audience made up of literally everyone he ever encountered, Jake finally gets that rapturous applause he craved his entire life. But it's utterly tragic, right? Because it only exists in his fading neurons as his body is slowly shutting down.
So, ultimately, the title, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, is not about a young woman ending a 6-week relationship at all. It is, in essence, a feature-length suicide note from an elderly man who decided that freezing to death in his truck was just easier than facing another day of relentless loneliness. The next morning, the film shows us his truck, completely buried under the snow. He succumbed to hypothermia in the night, exactly like his imaginary girlfriend morbidly wondered about earlier in the story. We want to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. Are your dreams truly your own? Or are they just a script that movies and society wrote for you? It is a pretty heavy question for sure, but answering it might just help us all stop waiting for a Hollywood ending and start living in the present. We really hope this explainer brought some clarity to a truly fascinating cinematic masterpiece. Thanks so much for learning with us today.